Good evening. We're going to start 3 minutes early because we have a packed agenda tonight, so let's use every moment we have. My name is Susan Hoffman, and I'm with the League of Women Voters of Northern Nevada. At this time, we would ask you to kindly silence your cell phones. And then also, if you're able, would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. It's exciting to see this level of engagement on this night, which is dedicated to the most fundamental right and responsibility of citizenship, that of voting. The overarching goal of the League of Women Voters is making democracy work. There is nothing more important to achieving this goal than having informed voters. That is the purpose of our voter forums. The League of Women Voters is proud to host these forums each year. Our partners in this endeavor include AAUW, Capital Branch, and Sierra Nevada Forums. These forums would not be possible without the generous support of our sponsors, the Nevada Appeal and KUNR. Adam Trumbull of the Appeal has been a valued partner in coordinating the forums over the years. The top quality journalists of the Appeal and KUNR cover election issues important to Northern Nevada. I encourage you to subscribe to the Appeal, and if you are able, to donate to KUNR. If you missed it, pick up Saturday's edition of the Appeal because they did a very nice job, thorough, covering the first two of our forums. Thanks to the fine work of our videographer, Jeff Mulvihill of InstaImage, you can access videos of all the forums on the Nevada Appeal's YouTube channel. We also appreciate the staff of the Brewery Arts Center for their work in preparing the facilities for this event. This year, we are oh so grateful to the Wild Horse Children's Theater for graciously rescheduling their Willy Wonka rehearsal so that we can utilize the stage tonight. Yay, Willy Wonka! You can also thank them by donating. We have a unicorn-shaped piñata out in the lobby, and we're taking donations for the Wild Horse Children's Theater. Misinformation and disinformation may be presented as fact during tonight's discussion. It's up to each of us to sort out fact from misinformation. So, due to scheduling conflicts, the order of tonight's forum has changed slightly. We will begin with a demonstration and discussion of question 3, open primary and ranked choice voting. Following that, we'll hear from supporters and opponents of question 7, voter ID. Then Carson City Clerk-Recorder Scott Hoen will take the stage to discuss voting in Carson City, and the evening will end with Nevada Secretary of State Cisco Aguilar and Deputy Secretary of Elections Mark Wlaschin. We're pleased to have students from Carson High School stationed on the aisles to collect your questions. Please write one question per card, and then wave your hand in the air, and those students will come pick it up and bring it to this table here, where volunteers will screen the audience questions to avoid duplication. And because of those same time constraints, we ask you to hold your applause until the end. You all received a little note paper with a QR code, and that is going to be part of our demonstration about ranked choice voting. And you can go ahead and do that now. Scan it on your phones. You'll have to use cellular. There is no Wi-Fi in here. And the results of all of that will come after the discussion. Okay? All right. Question 3 asks voters to amend the Nevada Constitution to allow open primaries and ranked choice voting for U.S. Senate, U.S. Representative, constitutional state officers, and state legislators. Dr. Sondra Cosgrove, history professor at College of Southern Nevada and executive director of Vote Nevada, will lead a demonstration of ranked choice voting. Let's see. Dr. Cosgrove and Jim Hartman, who's a retired attorney and a freelance political opinion writer, will present arguments for and against the proposal. Then we'll have a question and answer period. And after that, Dr. Cosgrove will explain about the results. All right? So we're going to begin now with 5-minute opening statements. Dr. Cosgrove, would you like to go first?
Sure, thank you. I thank everybody for being here tonight. In 2024, nearly 41% of Nevada voters are not affiliated with either of the major political parties, which makes them the largest group of voters in our state. Currently, our down-ballot races are already open primaries, so all voters can cast a primary vote. Yet in the important top-of-the-ballot races, which are closed primaries, the majority of voters are prohibited from voting. This means most voters cannot vote in these taxpayer-funded elections, which I see as a problem. Additionally, in our primary elections, turnout is often dismal. In the June 2024 primary election, only 19% of registered voters participated. Disinterested voters not participating is also a problem I see for our democracy. Ballot Question 3 offers solutions to these problems. Ballot Question 3 ensures no one is prohibited from voting in our top-of-ballot primary races. In these races, all candidates will be on one unified ballot, exactly as they are on our down-ballot primary races. This does not mean voters will get to choose which closed primary to participate in. That's what we do right now with same-day voter registration. Instead, it means all candidates are on one ballot, and just like in our down-ballot races, voters will cast one vote for one candidate. In addition to allowing almost 1 million voters to vote in these very significant top-of-the-ballot races, Ballot Question 3 will draw more interest in voting by also addressing a problem with only advancing the top 2 candidates in an open primary race. In most instances, the top 2 candidates are those with the most money. This means we often lose a lot of ideological diversity moving from the primary to the general election when younger candidates without a lot of money but with fresh ideas that attract younger voters usually drop off. So Ballot Question 3 advances 5 candidates into the general election to capture more ideological diversity and hopefully capture more voters' attention. As more ideas move forward, more voters will hopefully see someone who speaks to their concerns and will stay engaged throughout the whole election cycle. But by moving 5 candidates into the general election to provide more choices, we inadvertently create the spoiler effect, or vote splitting. If 3 Party A and 2 Party B candidates move forward, Party A could split its votes 3 ways and elect a candidate with less than 30% of the vote from Party B. To avoid this, Ballot Question 3 allows voters to rank up to 5 candidates. The ballot question clearly states that voters may rank up to 5 candidates. So if a voter chooses to not participate in ranked choice voting, they can pick one candidate exactly as they do now. When election officials tabulate all first choice votes, if a candidate receives 50% plus 1, that race is done. But if no candidate gets 50% plus 1 of the votes, that race becomes an instant runoff. The candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated, and the software sees who that candidate's first choice voters selected as their second choice. Those second choice votes are then allocated to the second choice candidates, and a second tabulation occurs. This process repeats until someone gets to 50% plus 1 of the votes. The ranked choice voting tabulation does not take days. Alaska adopted this system in 2022, and they live streamed their ranked choice voting tabulation on YouTube. That live stream was recorded and is still available to watch. The software tabulated all of Alaska's races in 32 minutes. In many places that use ranked choice voting, candidates understand that they may need second choice votes to win. So candidates talk to their opponents' voters to ask for second choice votes. In doing so, they win by being positive, affirming, and willing to find consensus. So negative campaigning has gone down. Critics say this process is too confusing. However, I believe anyone can learn if they are given the opportunity to ask questions and practice. I am personally committed to ensuring that these opportunities happen for every interested Nevadan before the 2026 election. We need a system that sees and hears younger voters and allows everyone to consider solutions that make sense for their issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hartman?
Yes. Question 3 is both confusing and complex, and it's probably going to the root of the most fundamental rights that Nevadans have. It has two prongs. The first prong is a jungle primary, which will have a very deleterious effect on political parties and increase the opportunity for self-funding candidates and money to control primary elections. So the political parties are under attack through the jungle primary part of this initiative. The other point that I would make is that ignored in all the advertising that has been run by the Yes on Question 3 campaign is any reference to where the big problem is, and that's the top 5 ranked choice. The advertising has been very dishonest in only emphasizing an open primary claim for Question 3. In fact, the biggest problem here is ranked choice voting, top 5, that gets no attention. This matter was put on the ballot by promoters, 5 out-of-state billionaires, including Catherine Gell, put up $16 million in 2022 to run a yes campaign that outspent the opponents by 12 to 1. There was $19.4 million spent for a yes campaign that emphasized only the open primary and didn't even address ranked choice voting, against $1.6 million for opponents. The other point I think that needs to be made here is this is the most radical and extreme version of ranked choice voting in the country. We only have 2 states currently that have ranked choice voting, Maine and Alaska. This would be a ranked choice voting system that is beyond what even Alaska has done. And importantly, that will get locked into the Constitution of Nevada. Even though this ranked choice voting is untested and unproven, it will get locked into the Constitution of the state of Nevada. And that means that if people don't like ranked choice voting or see problems with ranked choice voting, that problem can't be cured for about 3 election cycles. It would not be until 2032 that you could change back to the system that we have currently. I would also point out ranked choice voting, Question 3, is opposed almost across the board by the leadership of the state of Nevada. The State Democratic Party is opposed to Question 3 and urges a no vote. The Republican Party of the state of Nevada is opposed to Question 3 and urges a no vote. Senator Cortez Masto and Senator Rosens are adamant opponents of Question 3 and urge a no vote. Their opponents 2 years ago and currently, Adam Laxalt and Sam Brown, are both opposed to Question 3. The Speaker of the Assembly is opposed to Question 3, Steve Yeager. Mark Amodei, the congressman from here, is opposed to Question 3. The state AFL-CIO is opposed to Question 3. The Las Vegas Review-Journal, a conservative editorial policy, is opposed to Question 3. The Nevada Policy Research Institute, a conservative policy group, is opposed to Question 3. The Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada and about 20 progressive left-leaning groups are opposed to Question 3. Governor Gavin Newsom in California is opposed to ranked choice voting. The governor of Massachusetts, who successfully defeated ranked choice voting in the state of Massachusetts in 2020, is opposed to ranked choice voting. And I will also indicate that among elected election officials in the state, for example, the Douglas County Clerk Registrar has taken a position pretty remarkably to urge voters in Douglas County to vote against Question 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to rebut?
Sure. The redcoats were against our revolution too. The people with power oftentimes don't like to lose power. And so it does not surprise me that the list of people that were just read off have a considerable amount of power over our elections, and they don't like to have that power shifted over to the voters. I am not associated with the official campaign. I'm a grassroots person who really thinks that this reform is going to help our younger people, younger voters, be more engaged and not be so angry with our political system. It's not just Maine and Alaska that do ranked choice voting. Utah does it, California does it, New York does it. There's many states that do it. Colorado does it, and they're about to do it statewide.
Okay, thank you. Our first question from the audience is this. Question 3 is really 2 issues, open primary and ranked choice voting. Why are both options in one question? 3 minutes.
So if you want to be able to move more candidates forward so that you bring more interest into the general election from the primary, you're going to create the spoiler effect. You're going to create vote splitting. If you don't use ranked choice voting, you can inadvertently elect somebody with 21% of the vote. So if we want to have maybe some younger candidates who don't have a lot of money but have good ideas, and they're going to bring their younger voters with them into the general election to keep them engaged, that's good. I think that's a very good thing to do. But I don't want to be responsible for electing someone who might be an extremist with 21% of the vote.
Thank you. Mr. Hartman?
Yeah, I don't think there's any good reason why these 2 issues are being combined here. They should be separate and apart from one another. And let me also make a point about so-called open primaries and the fact that we don't have an open primary in Nevada. What we actually have is a modified closed primary in Nevada. On election day, if you want to vote a Republican ballot and you're a declined estate or Democratic voter, you can request a ballot after you've changed your party registration on same-day registration. So you could walk in, anyone can walk in here with same-day registration and change their party registration and get a ballot to vote in a primary. You don't need to pass question 3 to have that happen. And a jungle primary is going to do great damage to the political parties, and I can understand why the political parties are both very much opposed to question 3. We already have what I would describe as weakened partisan political parties in Nevada. They will become increasingly weakened if question 3 passes, and that's a bad thing, because what will fill that gap would be moneyed candidates who will be able to successfully run in these so-called jungle primaries.
Okay. Here's another question. Why is an amendment to the Constitution necessary to implement ranked choice voting, open primary? Wouldn't it be more appropriate to change Nevada's election system through legislation?
That was attempted in 2015. So Mr. Doug Goodman, who's been working on open primaries and ranked choice voting since 2013, met with 2 legislators in the 2015 session. They wrote up a bill, and when they sent that bill over to the Legislative Counsel Bureau, the attorneys for the legislature said, the Nevada Constitution currently says the person with the most votes wins. If you would like to go to a system where the winner has to have a majority of the votes, it has to be a constitutional amendment. There was no other way to run it except for that.
Mr. Hartman, would you like to respond?
Well, as I say, I think it's very, very unfortunate that with no testing, no background in all of this, where there's only 2 states in the country that have ranked choice voting, that we're going to go forward and lock this into the Constitution in an untested manner. So I think it's a strong reason to vote against question 3 is the fact that this would get locked into the Constitution and can't get amended until 2032.
Okay, here's a clarifying question. if my candidate loses in the ranked choice voting, will that person's votes be redistributed to other candidates who won, even though I don't want those candidates?
No. Your second and third choice votes only get redistributed if you made second and third choice votes. If you only vote for one candidate and your candidate is eliminated, if it goes into an instant runoff, your vote is counted as none of these candidates, which is what we can do right now.
Okay. Mr. Hartman, would you
Yeah,
like?
I would say this system is an elitist system that's being proposed. It discriminates against average voters, typical voters, normal voters, who are expecting to vote for one candidate. And I think it's grossly unfair. They're actually prejudiced if they don't, by coercion, participate in ranked choice voting. Their votes become discarded after their candidate potentially is eliminated. So this is a system for elitists, and it discriminates against typical average voters that, by the way, were struggling in any way to get informed on a number of issues. That people need to worry about judicial races and 7 constitutional issues or measures on the ballot, questions on the ballot, to then ask them to rank 5 candidates for offices, I think is beyond the expectations of what people could reasonably expect of voters here.
Can I respond, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. The ballot question
seconds.
says you may rank up to 5. So you can rank 1, you can do 2, you can do 3, you can do 4, you can do 5. If you would prefer to just pick 1 the way you're doing it right now, you can do that. And as long as your candidate's not eliminated, your vote continues to be counted. But if you only vote once and your candidate loses, you lose. That's just the way our elections run. I'm a community college professor. I don't think I'm an elitist. I have a person that stands in front of young people who tell me they don't want to vote anymore. We have to do something, and we need to do something to make it so that they feel like they really have someone they can vote for. But we also want to make sure that the person that probably has the most experience gets elected. Ranked choice voting allows that to happen, and it doesn't confuse them. And if anybody wants to do it and they have questions and they're feeling a little bit confused, you can always call me. I'm available. I know many of you know me. I will be here.
Mr. Hartman, would you like to respond?
Yeah, let's look at how this has worked out in practice. New York City had a mayoral election in 2021 using ranked choice voting. And the reality is it took 9 rounds to end up with Eric Adams winning the ranked choice voting system in New York City. 140,000 votes were so-called discarded. That he actually didn't win a majority of the vote in New York City. He won 42.9% of the vote. So that's how the system works. It doesn't provide for majority rule. It actually has a number of discarded votes, 140,000 in New York City, 2.5 times many black voters had discarded ballots than white voters. So it had a disparate impact. And when people say, oh, gee, this is going to be a fabulous system, think about the mayor of New York City. It took 9 iterations or rounds, and he's now under indictment. So it isn't as though this system works. Oakland has ranked choice voting. They went 9 rounds in 2022. The mayor of Oakland right now is under a recall, and that'll be on the ballot in November. So ranked choice voting has not developed great candidates or great office holders as a result of that process.
Okay, I have another question. The purpose of the primary is for the parties to select nominees. Why should non-members be allowed to vote in the other party's primary?
So in 2007, in the state of Washington, there was a coalition of people who got together and they ran a ballot question to do an open primary. And the Washington State Republican Party and Democratic Party sued, and it went to the U.S. Supreme Court. And in a ruling in 2008, the U.S. Supreme Court said this: as long as taxpayers are paying for an election, Taxpayers get to decide how to use that election. If they want to use it just to move candidates forward, they may do so. If the parties wish to have nominees as private political organizations, they can use any other private process that they pay for. We saw them do it this year. The Republicans used a private caucus to elect Donald Trump, and I think that they use a Zoom meeting to nominate Kamala Harris. They're private organizations, they can do that. They do not control our elections.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hartman?
Well, I believe in political parties having a right to conduct primary elections. And I'll just stay with that. I think that's an important associational right under the First Amendment.
Okay, great, thank you. Here's a note that says, can't moneyed candidates, quote unquote, moneyed candidates already run as a Democrat or a Republican or an independent?
Yes, I mean, there's money in politics right now. We all know that. This is not going to add anything new. We already have open primary races. Our mayor's race, our city council races, our judicial races, all of our education races are already open primary, top two, and we don't see the world end in having those races right now. But the system that we're proposing is modeled off Alaska. And so if you want to do some research tonight, please look up Mary Peltola, who's the first indigenous woman to run for Congress and to represent that state, beat Sarah Palin twice in that system. Lisa Murkowski, extremely independent Republican, who pretty much does what she wants because she can't be primaried, and she knows that now. And so there's lots of fine people in Alaska that were elected under this system, not having problems. You can go and do your research and see how it worked there, because this is the model we would like to adopt here.
Well, let's talk about Alaska, because Alaskans are unhappy enough with ranked choice voting that they have petitioned, and a ballot issue in November will be whether they will repeal their ranked choice voting system. And ranked choice voting in Arlington County, Virginia, they had it, and then after one and done for them, they went back to regular. They were unhappy with ranked choice voting. So the track record of ranked choice voting is mixed at best. And I think genuinely Nevada would be best served to look elsewhere and wait before leaping into the pool and adopting a ranked choice voting system here.
Okay, this is going to be the last question, and it's really 3 parts because these questions keep coming from the crowd. All right, you talk about the video in Alaska. What kind of training would be provided to educate the public on how to use ranked choice voting? What safeguards are in place to detect and correct voter errors? And would open primaries and ranked choice voting require extra staffing and funding for local state officials? And where's that coming from, cost-wise?
Sure. So since 2001, we've implemented many types of reforms in our election system. Currently, universal mail-in voting is one of those reforms. We need a lot of more voter education with mail-in voting, because right now, between the presidential preference primary and the June election, we threw out over 10,000 mail-in votes that needed a signature cure. So we need to have more voter education right now. So once this ballot question passes, then it would be a matter of going through our legislature and getting funding for more voter education to make sure that people understand it. If you use the voting machine, you cannot make an error. Just like if you use that QR code tonight, and if you tried to do an overvote or you tried to make an error, it turned red and told you that you weren't able to do that. So again, we're going to need voter education around mail-in voting. Again, that's something that we need right now. Can you read the second part of that?
The second part was about safeguards, which I think that you talked about, the computer programs.
So there are safeguards, and there's no special requirement for training for anybody that's going to be in the polls, because there's going to be voter information that will be available on your sample ballot. There's going to be pictures in your sample ballot the same way it is right now. You see a picture of your envelope that you have to sign for your mail-in ballot. So it's just a matter of extending out what we need. Yes, this is going to require extra funding. There's going to be a software upgrade that we will need to be able to process the ranked choice tabulations when those happen. There might be some extra paper costs depending on how many people run in the open primary ballots, but that's something that we've already been considering, seeing as we have open primaries and our down ballot races now.
Thank you. Mr. Hartman.
Yeah, you're going to require much longer ballots and much longer time to fill out ballots. That's a concern that is very real. The reality is longer ballots are going to make it much more difficult for people to access the system. And let's take a look at actually what is going to happen in Nevada. If this were in place today, you would not have, the presidential race would have 4 names on the ballot, but none of them would be ranked choice. That would be a vote straight away, not a ranked choice vote. The ballot issue below that, the U.S. Senate race, would have 5 options. It would be a ranked choice election. We're talking about confusion. The House race for Congress would be a ranked choice election. The Assembly race would be a ranked choice election. The mayor's race, however, would not be. So you'd have to skip back to a different voting process for the mayor's race. If you had 2, and we do have 2 Board of Supervisor races, that would be not ranked choice voting, but regular voting. So you're going to be hopscotching between asking people to vote ranked choice for some offices and not for other offices. It adds to the real confusion that is inherent in this proposal that's before voters as question 3.
Wow, what a great discussion this has been with lots of good information. So to close this up, Dr. Cosgrove, you want to do something with the computer?
Sure.
Or would you like to give a 1-minute closing statement first?
Let me do a 1-minute closing statement first.
Thank you.
It makes me really uncomfortable when somebody says that it's too confusing, because that's implying that voters can't understand something. Voters can understand a lot. We live in a complicated world where we do complicated things all day. To imply that people cannot learn something, I don't agree with that. Again, I work at a community college. You can teach anybody anything. You just need to spend time with them and answer their questions and let them practice. But the way this ballot question is set up, you don't have to rank. You can keep voting the exact same way you are right now. You can vote for one candidate and you can move on. And so I'm not accepting that somehow this is going to be too confusing for certain people, because I don't know anyone who can't understand something if it gets explained to them and they have their questions answered and they get to practice. And that's what we're going to do.
Thank you. Mr. Hartman?
Yeah, well,
1 minute.
confusing is what happened in Oakland, California, with a school board race, where people with ranked choice voting didn't have a first choice. They simply checked a second choice. And the question was, well, what did that mean? Should that have been a first? Anyway, in Oakland, things got so messed up in this last election that they actually seated a school board member who lost the election. And it was only discovered in March through somebody looking over what had happened that they had miscalculated who had been elected under ranked choice voting. So this is a lot of problems to be thrashed through, both educational issues with voters, but also running the system. As I say, the vote official registrar of voters, the clerk treasurer in Douglas County, has, I think, taken a pretty bold position saying that this is very complicated, and she urges people to vote no on question 3.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Cosgrove, are you ready? Okay, well, while we're waiting for that, I would like to introduce 2 special guests we have here tonight. They are here as part of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. This group of international election observers include Canada and the United States, as well as several Asian countries. So please welcome, they're out there somewhere, I can't see them, Natalie Krieger from Germany. Where are you? There you go. And Matthias Wandler from Sweden. They're going to spend the next several weeks, many weeks in Nevada. They're going to travel to Las Vegas, and they're going to go to Elko, and then they'll be back in Carson for the election time. And we had a little meeting today. It was very interesting to hear their work, so we're glad that you're here. Thank you for coming. We ready? Okay. Thank you. Oh, there we go. Okay, can I repeat what you've said? Because I can hear you. Okay, so she said, notice the different colors that back on that slide, where the color changes. That's where somebody's votes were moved up to the top. So Joe Lombardo didn't get enough votes, so they moved his votes to somebody's second choice. Is that accurate?
Right.
Okay. See?
So there was 4 rounds of tabulation.
4 rounds of tabulation. Okay. Can you see that where they dropped off, they were moved up to other people's second choice vote? Okay. Round 1, round 2.
And this is not the optimal way of doing this. So if anybody wants to do a right choice voting demonstration with me or anybody else on the grassroots team, we're very willing to do it in a different space.
Okay. This is not the optimal location to do this, but thank you for trying to show us how this works. We appreciate that. All right. Thank you, both of you. Okay, here we go. Question 7 asks voters to amend the Nevada Constitution to require a photo ID when voting in person. If approved in this election cycle, it will be on the 2026 ballot for a second approval before becoming law. Speaking in favor of this question is David Gibbs, president of Repair the Vote PAC and Clark County Republican Central Committee chair. Speaking in opposition to this question is Amber Falgout, Communications Director of Battleborn Progress. You each have 5 minutes for an opening statement. Mr. Gibbs, would you like to go first?
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Welcome, everybody.
Get closer to the mic.
Closer to the mic,
Yep.
okay. How's that? Yeah. All right, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today to talk about question 7, voter ID. 36 states in this country require some form of ID in order to vote. 24 of them require a photo ID. Nevada is one of the few that does not. One of the things that we have seen in elections across this country in the last 20 years is people are beginning to have questions. They're losing faith in our election system, our election process. Back in 2004, only 6% of the people in this country felt uncomfortable or were not confident in the elections. That number, as of this year, according to a poll done by Gallup just last month, has risen to 19%. So almost 1 in 5 people no longer have faith in our election processes and in the outcome. Almost half of the people, almost half of independents, believe that there are questions and concerns and problems with elections. 1 in 5 Democrats have the same concerns about the counting of the ballots and the valid outcome of the elections. Voter ID is a step in trying to restore that faith. It's making sure that the person who goes into a voting booth to vote in person is actually that person. You show up, you show an ID with your picture on it, a government-issued photo ID with your picture on it and your name on it, and it proves that you are who you say you are. If you vote by mail in Nevada, In addition to signing the ballot or signing the envelope, it will require that you put either the last four of your driver's license or the last four of your social security number as a method of verifying you are that person. A lot of us have seen pictures starting in 2020 of ballots laying on the ground outside post offices in Las Vegas, especially where we have a lot of transient people. Okay, that effort now, I know there's been a lot of effort that's been done, and I congratulate Secretary of State's office. They removed over 100,000 people off the rolls who they know no longer live in Nevada. So that hopefully will reduce that. But the point is, there are a lot of ballots that are laying around, and we need to make sure that the person who's sending those ballots in is actually that person. Everybody deserves to be verified. Now, the question is, well, is there widespread fraud? Does there need to be widespread fraud? I don't think there is widespread fraud. But in North Las Vegas, where I live, in 2011, in the primary election for city council, the second and third place candidates tied. And they ended up drawing cards to see which one of the two would go forward to the general election. In 2 years later, my city councilman lost his election by 1 vote. So it doesn't take many fraudulent votes or many inappropriate votes in order for it to have an impact on an election. This is one method of restoring faith in the process that a lot of people have lost. In Nevada, a poll that was done just last month and released, it was published last week in the Nevada Independent, 73% of Nevadans are in favor of this, including 71% of independents and 49% of Democrats are in favor of voter ID. This is a very popular measure. And we feel confident, that people will be able to that people will be very much in favor of this issue in the polls, and that this will not create problems in any upcoming elections. In 2021, Georgia passed a voter ID law. There was an effort, a lot of people, one of the opponents complained that a lot of people would not be able to vote because they don't have IDs, and especially that it would affect the minority communities in Georgia. However, in 2022, the percentage of minorities who voted in Georgia actually went up. The same thing was true in Texas when they passed the law in 2021 as well. So there has been no impact on elections, on the ability of people to cast ballots. If there were states across the country that require a photo ID and people were having a hard time casting ballots, you would hear about it. I could not find a single article after months of researching where there was any big effort or any big problems in any of the states that require a photo ID with people being able to vote. So I urge you to vote yes on 7 because I think it will help restore the faith and help the faith in our elections here in Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Falgo?
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Amber Falgo, and I'm honored to be here with everyone tonight. I am the Communications Director with Battle-Born Progress. We are a nonprofit that has been around in Nevada for about 10 years, and we work on a host of issues, including voting rights. So we are staunchly opposed to Question 7 because we believe that it will make voting harder and that it will potentially disenfranchise certain voters. Voter ID laws are widespread across the country, that is true. However, most states who implement voter ID laws also provide low-cost or free IDs because they have been seen as a poll tax. So in order to vote, you need to have a driver's license or some form of government-issued ID. If you don't have that form of ID, that is a cost incurred to you to exercise your right to vote. So most states, when they implement voter ID laws, they provide low-cost or free IDs to combat that. That is not a part of Question 7 currently. That is something the Nevada legislature would have to deal with if and when it is passed twice this year and potentially in 2026. That is one of the reasons that we are opposed to it. In addition to that, voter ID laws don't solve the issue of voter fraud, and we don't have a widespread voter fraud issue in this country or in this state. So it's really a solution in search of a problem. I understand that it is very popular. However, we simply don't have widespread voter fraud. I mean, even in preparing to do this, I looked at 2020 election results and also 22, and you're talking in 2022, the number of potential double votes in Nevada was 146. That's 0.0001, 4 zeros and a 1, sorry, percent of the vote. It's not even remotely enough to swing at least a federal election. It's simply just, there is no widespread voter fraud in our state. We have extremely safe and secure and modern elections, and our Secretary of State's office, our Attorney General's office, all do an incredibly good job of investigating any potential cases of voter fraud and prosecuting them to the fullest extent of the law. So to vastly change our election system by requiring identification is something that I personally and professionally do not feel we should do.
Thank you. We're going to move to the question and answer portion. I'm going to be clearer this time. You each get 2 minutes to answer the question and then 30 seconds if you would like to rebut what the other person said. So, although I have to say, in your opening, you already answered most of these questions, but let's just try some for clarification. Ms. Falgo, I'll start with you. What guardrails are already in place to protect election integrity in the state of Nevada?
Thank you. So Nevada is a signature verification state. So when you go to vote, they verify your signature. However, as I didn't learn but experienced recently, my husband and I moved out to Fernley, Nevada. We were luckily able to purchase a home out there, and we updated our voter registration. Both of us had been registered to vote in Washoe County, so we update our voter registration to vote in Lyon County, and you have to provide the last four of your social, the last four of your social and or the last four of your driver's license to update your voter registration. So that's one check for people who are moving, updating, and all of those things, right? In addition to that, when you register to vote, you have to provide a Nevada-issued driver's license, or if you're changing from another state, you have to provide, I believe, a birth certificate or a power bill or something to verify you are who you are. We have checks in place when people register to vote. So really, with question 7, it is more of a redundancy that is going to impact voters when they actually go to cast their votes.
Thank you.
Did I get 30 seconds?
No, you get 2 minutes.
I get 2 minutes, okay. Wanted to make sure. Okay, 2 things. Number one, the signature verification process that they use in Clark County for Nevada, or I'm sorry, for mail-in ballots, the manufacturer only certified it to 50% accuracy. And Clark County, the Registrar of Voters in 2020 downgraded it to 40%. So the signature verification process, while it does good things, is not 100% accurate. Okay, somebody else can do that. Now they talk about the fact of, there aren't that many cases. Well, 146 votes, if she talked about it, is enough to sway some of the elections. We had a county commission race in Clark County that was decided by 15 votes. And in that election, the Registrar of Voters said that he had over 130 questionable ballots and actually recommended that they redo that race. But the county commission decided not to. But so this was a case of where they had questionable ballots, and it was enough to potentially change the outcome of that race. So, those examples do exist. Like I said, I don't believe there's widespread fraud. It doesn't take widespread fraud to impact the race. Yes, we do signature verification, or we do, an ID when you register to vote. But if Jim goes in to vote for John and doesn't have to show an ID and casts John's vote in addition to casting his own vote, if John never goes in to vote, you don't know that was a problem. You don't know what you don't look for, and you don't know whether or not to look unless somebody complains. Well, I did have a friend of mine about 10 years ago who went in to vote early, and she was told that she already had voted. They gave her the date she voted and the place she voted, and she said, I wasn't even in the state that day. And she proved to them she was not in the state that day. But somebody had voted for her, which means somebody had gone in and had signed her name, and it had been accepted, and they had cast a ballot in her name. So there is documented proof, or there is proof that such things do happen.
Thank you. Do you have a rebuttal?
Sure. So 146 votes in a local election is certainly enough to sway an election. However, talking about federal elections, and even the Associated Press did a investigative report on the 2020 presidential election. In that election, in the 7 swing states, 475 allegations of voter fraud happened out of 25 million votes. Again, this is an infantile, it's a significantly low percentage.
Thank you. Thank you. Will the voter ID, this one, you're going to start first, Mr. Gibbs. Will the voter ID regulation put onerous burdens on some voters? Many Nevadans live in rural areas miles and hours away from a DMV or other offices where they might obtain a voter ID, a photo ID. Is it fair to require these people to spend money and time in order to participate in what is an essential freedom?
According to the legislature, there wasn't a proposal or a bill put before the legislature last session to do pretty much what question 7 is doing. The Legislative Council Bureau was asked how many people do not have a photo ID in Nevada. And they estimated that fewer than 20,000 Nevadans who would be able to vote do not have a photo ID. All right, so we're talking a very small number of people who don't have one, number one. Number two is, we talk about voting being one of the most important duties that we have. If you're going to have a driver's license, you got to drive to the DMV to get the driver's license. All right, if you want to vote, then you need to find you can find a way to get a photo ID.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Falgo?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So it is true that it will create a burden for voters, especially rural voters, tribal voters, et cetera. There are 20 DMV offices in the state of Nevada, and 5 in Las Vegas. There's 1 in Reno, 1 in Fallon. For example, I live in Fernley. Fallon is about a 40 to 50 minute drive from where I live. And then if I wanted to go into Reno, that's anywhere from 40 to 50 minutes too. So it's a 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other. If I needed to go and get an ID and I was working an hourly wage job, it's an hour to Fallon. It's however long I'm waiting at the DMV. It's an hour back. That's a lot of lost wages in addition to the cost of the ID. So it does create a barrier that, yes, certainly if you want to go get an ID and you want to get a driver's license and you're really, really amped up to vote and that's the requirement, there are going to be people who will do that no matter what. But there are also going to be people who find it very hard to get to DMV, to incur the cost, and meet that requirement for something that, quite frankly, is their constitutional right.
Thank you. Would you like to rebut?
They can still vote by mail.
Okay, well, that leads me right to my next question, which is voting by mail is the law in Nevada. Those who mail in a ballot do not have to include a photo ID. They just include numbers assigned to them when they registered to vote. This option is not offered for in-person voting. What's the difference?
Because you're showing a photo ID and they can look and say, yes, that's you, that's your name, so you're good to go. That's the entire purpose behind having the photo ID.
But I think the question is that when you mail in your ballot,
right,
you're not asked to prove that in any way.
We looked at doing that. In fact, we were encouraged to do that, and I got to thinking about it, saying, do I want to put a copy of my driver's license in an envelope and send it up to the registrar's office or the county clerk's office and not know what happens to a copy of that? And we decided we did not think that was a viable idea. In fact, I made a comment to somebody, I'm not sure I'd vote to do that. So what's a lot of states do, and what I had to do when I was in the military, I voted absentee from the time I was 18 until I was 44 years old, and I never missed an election. And I had to send in a form requesting a ballot, and I had to put the last four of my Social Security number on that application. Some states require people, when they mail in their absentee ballots, military folks or folks who live out of state, when they mail it in, to do that, exactly that. This is, when I put this together, I studied a lot of state laws. The photo ID laws that we use were taken from Georgia, Texas, and Virginia. The mail ID, the mail ID idea came out of Virginia, and I can't remember the other state, Alabama, I think it was, where a lot of these states already require you to do that when you mail in an absentee ballot. So this is nothing significantly new or unique to Nevada.
Thank you. Ms. Falgo?
Sure. I think it presents specifically, I'm glad that they included that because I would definitely not want people to have to, I agree. You don't want to send a picture of your driver's license or your ID out into the world, right? I do think even writing the numbers on it presents some challenges because there are, of course, people who are going to be uncomfortable putting that information out there as well. In addition to that, I think it also presents challenges as far as people's handwriting. I will, and my husband agrees, I can't make heads or tails of what my husband writes. He's fully, can read, write, all the things, and is a phenomenal man, and I love him with all my heart, but his handwriting is rough. So if he were to vote by mail and write those numbers, I am not confident, and quite frankly, he would not be confident that those numbers would be legible enough for his vote to be counted. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. A couple of questions I'm going to merge here. This person said voter ID, in the 60s and 70s, voter ID was used to make it difficult for minorities to vote, thus disenfranchising them. And on that same note, are you concerned that having 20,000 people in Nevada who don't have photo ID and are unable to vote, that would change the outcome of the election? Ms. Falgo, you're first.
Sure, yes. I am concerned about 20,000 people who don't have an ID being able to get an ID or being disenfranchised from their constitutional right to vote. In addition to that, yes, historically, voter ID laws and other horrific laws have been put forward to essentially make it more challenging and more difficult for people of color to vote. We know this. This is a part of our history. This is something that has been done for decades upon decades. And oftentimes, I will say, voter ID laws are seen as akin to that, as akin to poll taxes and efforts to make minority turnout more difficult. So I do think it is a fair question to ask, and I think it's a fair criticism of voter ID laws. And I would be very concerned. Quite frankly, I think that if this passes in 2024 and also 2026, the Nevada legislature is going to have to enact some form of low cost or free ID, which is going to be a significant cost for the state.
Thank you. Mr. Gibbs?
We've come a long way in the 60 years since a lot of these things happened. We've come a long way since the 15th Amendment. Yes, we have. All right. When this law was passed in Georgia, those same arguments were raised, and yet the minority percentage in Georgia increased in 2022, the first year that photo ID was in effect. Same thing happened in Texas in 2022, the first year that photo ID was in effect. You're not hearing of the 24 states that require a photo ID, you do not hear complaints from minority communities that people of color are not able to vote. There was, when this question was raised just recently, and I can't remember exactly who did the interview, but an individual who was doing the report walked through Brooklyn, through lower income areas of Brooklyn, and asked about 20 people in Brooklyn about photo ID, and every single one of them had a photo ID, okay? Every single person pulled out a photo ID and showed it to the person doing the interview. So to say that, minorities generally do not have a photo ID, first of all, I think it's, for lack of a better word, kind of an insult to the minority community to think that they don't do things that require a photo ID. The other part that goes along with it is, anybody that doesn't have a photo ID and doesn't want to get a photo ID in Nevada, they still have the ability to vote by mail. A lot of other states that have photo ID do not have that opportunity where you can just vote by mail. So therefore, there is a way for folks who don't have a photo ID to still vote in Nevada.
Thank you. Would you like a rebuttal?
Sure. I just looked it up. New York provides free IDs to all residents. Again, we would have to provide free or low-cost IDs to make this constitutional. So that is something voters should think about as they're making their decision on it.
Thank you very much. We're going to give you each a 2-minute closing statement. And let's see, who started with the opening? You did. So you can have the Ms. Falgout, you can have the first closing.
Perfect, thank you. I want to thank all of you for being here, taking time out. These are important questions and important information, and I appreciate everybody being here. Question 7, and I think there's been a lot of good information shared and a good discussion this evening, which is awesome to see. One of the other issues with question 7 is not just that it doesn't provide low cost or free IDs, or that it's going to be an issue as far as mail voting with writing your driver's license, the last 4 of that, or the last 4 of your social security number on the stuff to turn your ballot in. There is also the broad swath of IDs that are outlined under this ballot question. Good thing, because awesome, you can use multiple different IDs, and in fact, if you're over a certain age, you can use an expired ID. However, one of the issues with that, of course, is you're talking about voters going into vote and say your ID's expired because you're over the age that it's mandated in the law. What if that poll worker doesn't know the law? And then you can't vote. It presents more challenges. It just does. There's no way around that. And if you're gonna enact something that presents more challenges to accessing a fundamental constitutional right, personally and professionally, I think you should have a very good reason for doing so. And without widespread voter fraud, I just do not see this as a necessary step to ensuring the security of our elections when our elections are already secure. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gibbs.
Well, thank you all for being here this evening. Thank you for your interest in questions 3 and question 7. They're both very important issues that are on our ballot. Thanks to Amber for being here. It's been fun being up here with you.
Yes.
And thank you for the opportunity. You know, this, as I started out, you know, one of the things that people need to do is they need to have, like I said, faith in the outcome, and we're seeing that erode in this country. I mentioned earlier about a poll that was done just last month by Gallup that showed that almost 1 in 5 people in the country have lost faith and confidence in the election process and in the guarantee of the factual outcome of the election. Right? That is something that just creates concerns, and I know that we're going to see that this year. It's already, you know, both sides are already talking about it. You know, we're hearing it from both sides, from both political parties already, that there are concerns about what may or may not happen in next month. And so I'm hoping that, you know, those fears are quickly allayed. But, you know, one of the things when you walk into a voting booth, or when anybody walks into a voting booth, you know, there should be a guarantee that that person is who they say they are. All right? That they look and they say, yep, you are David Gibbs, this is your ballot, and your photo ID says you are David Gibbs. And I think that's something that would make sure that people have more faith in the process. As far as the mail-in portion is concerned, as I mentioned about the signature verification process and the questionable, the number of ballots that don't get cured, this is one method of helping to cure those ballots. If you've got last four of a social security number, you know, you've got a good idea already of who that individual is, and verification that that individual is who they say they are. And that is all we're trying to do here. We're not, you know, the whole thing about fears of people being told that this is going to stop folks from voting, it hasn't done that in any other state that does it, and 24 states in this country already have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, our next Person in the hot seat is the Carson City Clerk-Recorder, Scott Hoen. Mr. Hoen, thank you for being here tonight.
You're welcome.
As the elected Clerk-Recorder of Carson City, you are certainly aware that the recent mistakes with the ballots have led to concern from many citizens of Carson City. The questions have been pouring in, and we are glad you are here tonight to address these concerns. We'll begin with an opening statement from you. Do you want an opening statement, or you want questions?
Oh, I can start real quick, real fast. My apologies. Ultimately, it was my mistake that the first original ballot was printed incorrectly. For those of you that don't know, the error on the original ballot was a misclassification of a party on the U.S. House of Representative race. The ballot showed one candidate to be a Democrat, and this person should have been an Independent American Party candidate. In consulting with the Secretary of State, the legal team, I even brought in the elections group, which is a top consulting company for the country. Everybody recommended to do this right with a federal race. We send out a corrected ballot. Not just post a notice, but we send out a corrected ballot. So we're going through the process to do that. The corrected ballot was actually in the mail out of Seattle on Friday. It probably would have been delivered today to your residence, but today is a federal holiday for the post office. So you'll probably receive it tomorrow and the next day for the corrected ballot. Rest assured, if you don't vote your corrected ballot and you do vote your original ballot, that will be counted. So for those about 1,000 people that we've already done signature verification of mail ballots dropped off at our office or at City Hall or received in the mail. Most of them have been dropped off, to be honest with you. Those will be counted if they don't turn in a ballot or a corrected ballot. We will not count the original ballots until the 4th day after the election. So our NRS rules are that a ballot that's returned to us postmarked on or before Election Day can be counted up to 4 days after the election. So on Saturday, the 9th, at the close or when we pick up the mail at the post office, we will then have all of our corrected ballots in the system, and then we can go to count the original ballots. We're already doing signature verification on them. One of the things that was brought up today is about computers checking signature verification. We don't. We don't use a computer system to check signatures. We verify 100% of those signatures on those mail ballots. If we can't verify it with the main or last signature used, we'll go back and look at the history, look at the DMV application, look at the past mail ballot signature, look at any signature that we have on file to make sure that we can get a match. And we go out of our way to make sure we give people the benefit of the doubt to get that match. If they don't match, we send out a cure letter. So we're in the process of doing the few that we have right now. In Nevada, we've been really fortunate to have a good signature verification or a high rate of verified ballots. Yeah, I mean, the only thing else I can say is, again, I'm sorry. It's my ultimate fault and my ultimate responsibility. I get that. We had a team, and our team is excellent, so don't take it out on the team. I have 5 full-time people working right now, probably 12 hours a day to make this all work. Today, I invited the 2 parties to what we call a pre-logic and accuracy testing of our equipment and our systems. One of the parties showed up, and I'm thankful for that, because the more they learn about the process we go through to get our equipment ready, meaning we zero out all the equipment, we prove that it's all zeroed out, we then load a test election, the actual election that we're going to be used this 2024 general election. We run that election through our equipment with all the different possibilities. So we know what the outcome should be. Does our equipment produce the outcome that it's supposed to be? And they do, and we certify the equipment. So we're ready for this 2024 general election. We've added different drop box locations and more voting capability for all residents of Carson City. So one of the major changes we made is we put a mail drop box at City Hall. A lot of people go to City Hall wanting to drop off their ballot, not knowing that our election office is actually at the courthouse. So we added that drop box, and it's actually been heavily used right now, so I'm thankful for that. That's under a camera. That's right outside the treasurer's office. It's only open 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. They can drop the ballot off at our counter at the courthouse. Early election starts on October 19th. So next Saturday from 10 to 2 is the first day of early voting, and it usually is well attended. That will be a drop box there as well as the 2 weeks leading up to November 1st, and then Election Day on November 5th. We've added the tribal locations this year because they requested it, and they have every right to do so. So Carson Colony is a drop box location, and it's only open on certain hours and certain days, and it's in the sample ballot on page 5. Stewart, that colony, wanted to have a full-blown election center just like we have at the community center. So they're going to be open on Election Day, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. There'll be a drop box there as well. Anybody can drop their ballot off at those 2 locations. Anybody can go vote in person at the Stewart location. Again, trying to make it easier to drop off the ballot and not have to rely on the post office necessarily. I do have to tell you that we're fortunate to have a new postmaster in Carson City, and he is going out of his way to make sure that ballots are postmarked on Election Day. We probably got 40, 50 ballots last June that were postmarked one day after the election. And my guess is voters probably put that ballot in the mailbox thinking that it was going to get postmarked that day, but it got postmarked the next day. Our postmaster is going to go out of his way to make sure he can postmark those envelopes when they get them on Election Day. He's also going to give us another pickup. So we're going to pick up mail on Election Day at our normal time, 1 o'clock, and then also at 7 o'clock in the evening. So he's going out of his way to make it better, easier, and making sure every vote gets counted. I just encourage everybody to vote. Again, my mistake on the corrected ballot, if you mail your corrected ballot in, that one will be counted. If you don't, your original ballot will be counted. And we've got systems in place, we've got equipment in place to do this the proper way. Every voter record is noted, and we scan signatures, we scan the envelopes. We're going out of our way to make sure that this is a secure, safe election, and every vote gets counted.
Thank you. Okay, some questions. In today's political climate, with the fear-mongering and disinformation, many people are fearful and mistrust our elections. These mistakes add to those suspicions and fears. I'm saying that you are here to reassure our community that the mistakes were unintentional and the ballot counting will be fair. So in order to do that a little more, can we have a peek inside your office? So for me personally, you're saying these wrong ballots are coming in, and so they're going to be stashed away somewhere and not touched until the other ballots come in. And then at that point, someone will go through all those ballots and make sure that that person voted? Because what if someone sent in the first one and they don't send in another one?
Yeah, great question. And we've taken that into account. So when we get our ballots, the original ballot doesn't have any markings on that ballot. The corrected ballot will be labeled corrected ballot. We're verifying the signature on all our ballots, first of all, but we're keeping them separate. We have 2 vaults in Carson City, 2 secure vaults that only limited staff has access to. The janitorial staff can't even get into our elections room or our vaults. It's just tightly secured where we keep these ballots. So the original and the corrected ballot are kept separate. We're verifying the signatures of the original ballot, because if we don't get this B ballot, we want to be able to count this original ballot as quickly as possible 4 days after the election. We also want to make sure that we give everybody the opportunity to get their signature cured or fixed if there is a problem on the ballot that comes in. So we keep them separate. Once we do the signature verification on both of them, and most importantly on the original ballot, we then are putting them in alphabetical order so we can easily go find the ballot and pull it if we get a ballot B. Now, our equipment, our system, one of the pieces of equipment that I purchased for the county since coming into office is this mail ballot scanning piece of equipment. And when we scan our mail ballots, we're taking pictures of the signature, we're taking pictures of the mail envelope itself. At the same time, that data is being compared against who has already voted, whether it be voted an original ballot, voted in person. You'd be surprised, we do get those people that have voted in person and a mail ballot shows up. And you got to catch those. We can't allow double voting. So we've got them separated. We're ready. We're going to be ready to go 4 days after the election to run ballot A if necessary. I'm hopeful most people will vote their corrected ballot. This does not affect in-person voting. We're probably going to get a very big turnout this year. You know, the Department of Homeland Security and the CISA organizations, they've done audit of our polling location in our office. I get almost daily alerts about election security issues. They tell me that it's going to be one of the most contentious elections in U.S. history, no matter who wins. So they want us to be ready. So we have contingency plans just in case things go wrong. Loss of power, something interrupting, an active shooter, whatever it may be. We've played out all these scenarios to be ready for anything that comes up. Because if I have to switch from the community center to the courthouse for voting, I can. We've got backup equipment, and we're stronger for it. And I feel comfortable. I feel confident. And if anybody wants to come by, if anybody wants to take a tour and see and touch and feel and understand it, I welcome it. The more you know about what we do, the better. We have over 85 poll workers already trained, already set up, ready to go. We're implementing a brand new voter registration system implemented by the state called the VREM system. You'll hear about that later from Mr. Wlaschin and our Secretary of State, Mr. Aguilar. So we've got a new system that we're deploying that's going to make it easier for our poll workers, easier for you when you come check in and vote. But all this is just setting it up for success, and I'm happy for it. And again, come by my office, look, see, touch, feel. You'll be confident after you do that.
Okay, continuing to look behind the scenes, because I believe that there's a desire out there based on these questions to know how this happened. So here are some questions. What is the proofreading process for ballots and sample ballots? How many people did that, and who were they? Why was the county chief deputy of elections position never filled after Miguel, I can't read his last name, Camacho, left? And will this error result in a higher potential for lawsuits?
A lot of questions.
That is a lot of questions. Let's talk about the proofreading section first.
I'm sorry?
The proofreading section?
Yeah, I mean, we got the sample ballot right. And for whatever reason, we didn't catch the one-party error. There was a lot going on this election. I don't want to bore you with the details. You know, Kennedy was on the ballot, then he was off the ballot. Jill Stein was on the ballot, then they're off the ballot. We had to go through different party designations in terms of abbreviations. Is it no party? Is it non-party? Is it NPP? Is it NP? There's a lot of technicalities regarding our VREM system and all the different vendors that we use. We don't just use one vendor. So we have Carson City is very fortunate to have election systems and software, ES&S, as our election equipment vendor. The other counties, 15 out of the 17 counties, use the Dominion product that you've heard about. Our clerk, 2 clerks ago, decided to go with ES&S. So our data's got to be put into the ES&S portal, that vendor portal that creates the ballot that we then send to our printer. So we proof it when we put it in ES&S, we proof it when it goes to the printer, we proof it when we get it back, we proof it and compare it to the sample ballot. There's 5 people that's involved in my staff to make it happen. We are implementing new processes for 2026. Trust me, believe me, we'll probably have an army of 50 people making sure. I mean, seriously, we're going to go overboard on proofing that for the next election. The Secretary of State's office helped us in terms of reviewing the information. It's just, we missed this one, and I can't do anything about it. Why didn't I fill the Chief Deputy of Elections office? It's a complicated answer. All I can tell you is the pay grade of that position in Carson City is very, very low. To get a quality person with management skills, it takes a lot more than our pay range has to offer. So I made a choice. I made a choice to leave it empty. I made a choice to get 2 more part-time people that are actually working full-time right now. So I basically got 2 bodies right now rather than 1, and my staff is excellent. I mean, they're working 12-hour days, and we've got great team meetings going on every morning to see what we've done and what we're gonna do for the day. Communication's excellent. I just decided to deploy our resources a little bit different to give us more manpower to make the election work for Carson City.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And the big question, how much money has the new ballot due to typos cost Carson City voters?
I don't know, but I really don't know. I just gathered what postcard costs were. We're trying to get the printing invoices now. When we found out the ballot error, October 5, to actually get your ballot in the mail tomorrow, the vendor, K&H Printers in Washington, jumped through hoops. They were on calls with me in the weekend. The Secretary of State, Mark Wlaschin, was on the calls with me the weekend that happened, the 6th and the 7th. We moved things so quickly to get it done with a week turnaround time to make sure you get your ballot so it doesn't disrupt what we're doing. And again, I apologize. They're good. They got the ballot out fast. I wanted to get the corrected ballot in your hands, and we'll report the costs when I get them. I mean, I'd rather give you an accurate number when we have it.
Okay. Okay, well, here's an important question. During the primary election, there were food trucks at the community center. Will you do that again for the general election, and if so, when?
You know, it's all about the experience for me. It's literally when in February with no music, it was deader than a doornail, and it's like, okay, we're gonna play some patriotic music, number 1. Number 2, we're gonna have a photo booth. So if you vote in person and you put your ballot in the tabulator and you get your I voted sticker, and a lot of people are proud of getting that I voted sticker, you can go to the exit, take a great picture with you, your family, your loved ones that you brought to show how to vote. 1,000 people took a picture in June with 4,000 shares because it was texted or emailed to them. So they enjoyed the photo booth, and I'm glad that they did. And yes, we had popcorn, and yes, we had balloons for the kids. But we put food trucks out there in June. We had a taco truck and we had a shaved ice truck. One of my poll workers said, Scott, you know, it would be really great. It's hot. It would be really great if you had a snow cone or whatever. So I brought a shaved ice the next day. And the vendors were great here in Carson City. So yes, we will have food trucks on election day. We're gonna have a hamburger truck, a taco truck, a coffee truck.
Thank you for that. Now we're going to bring up, for the last section, Secretary of State Cisco Aguilar and Deputy Secretary of Elections Mark Wlaschin.
While they're moving up here, carson.org/elections. So CARSON, carson.org/elections. If you want to know if your in-person vote counted, if you want to know your mail ballot was received, that is the place you go. If you want to know more questions about what this process and what we're going through, if you go to carson.org/2024 ballot FAQ, you can learn about what we just talked about today, steps, processes. I want to be as transparent as possible.
Great, thank you. Okay, now we're happy to welcome to the stage the Nevada Secretary of State, Cisco Aguilar, and Deputy Secretary of Elections, Mark Wlaschin. I was going to tell you what they're going to address, but I think we'll just let them speak. So would you like to go first, or do you have a presentation to say?
I don't have a presentation, but welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. You know, Nevada being a battleground state, being a swing state, being a purple state, our elections matter, and we need to ensure that we're doing the best job we can to serve every Nevadan across this state. Your engagement, your participation, the fact that you're here willing to engage and learn about the process is critical. We need to ensure that everybody knows that Nevada runs some of the safest, most secure, and accessible elections in the country, and that's because we have 17 clerks throughout this state in our 17 counties who are working extremely hard every day to get it right for all of us. So thank you for being here.
Good evening. My name is Mark Wlaschin, the Deputy Secretary for Elections, and really just to piggyback on Secretary Aguilar's comments, there's really 2 points that I'd like to really drive home, especially, we get a lot of calls from, I think, many of you actually in the Elections Division. The 2 points, and again, I know there's a lot of discussion about ballots and reprinting and timelines, those sorts of things. First one is that the Secretary, the 17 county election officials, every staff member in every county and in the Elections Division, we are determined to ensure one voter gets one vote, period. The security of our elections is something that we take very, very seriously and that we work year-round to make sure that, again, your voice is heard. And that's the second part. Really, more than anything, again, in the Elections Division, our focus is making sure that voters understand how they can get to the ballot, whether it's, again, using the vote by mail process and when you get a mail ballot, whether it's voting in person during the early voting period that starts this coming Saturday on October 19th, or whether it's in person on Election Day. We also have a system for covered voters, voters who are active duty military, their family members, tribal voters on a colony or reservation, or voters with a disability, as well as overseas citizens. So again, really getting the word out about ensuring that you can get to the ballot box. And that again, Nevada, as the Secretary said, our elections are designed to be accessible so that you can vote and your voices can be heard. And again, but once, right? All of us get one vote and one voice, period. It's something we take very seriously.
Great, thank you. We'll just start with some questions then. The recently mailed postcards regarding updating signatures caused confusion among voters and concerns about sharing sensitive information through the mail. Please explain why these cards were sent out.
Yes. So we instituted VREMS, the Voter Registration and Election Management System, statewide. And when we changed, because of the new system, every new voter in Nevada got a voter ID number. That is to prevent duplicates across counties, to ensure that one voter has one ID and there aren't duplicates across several counties. By law, we were required to send out that new number to every voter in Nevada. And so we thought, let's use this opportunity, one, to increase the security of the system by having an updated signature, but two, to also increase the capacity of the clerks to process mail-in ballots. Because with a new signature on file, an updated signature, if those signatures match, they go into processing. If the signatures do not match, they go into a curing process. The curing process takes up a significant amount of time to reach out to the voter to determine that the voter voted that ballot. It's part of the security process. And so to speed up and decrease the number of cured ballots was a priority. And that was the goal. And I know your clerk here in Carson City decided not to use the signature verification, which is great. It was his choice. This is his community. He understands the wants and needs of his voters. And we went with a different design. When we proofed that card, it did not include the second piece. And so when we approved it and sent it off to the vendor for approval, that second piece was not part of the process. And we quickly reached out to the vendor, the printer, and said, what happened here? How did this occur? Why did it occur? The printer took full responsibility for the mistake that was made. And I have shared that letter with your clerk and also with your mayor to say this was the responsibility of the vendor, the printer who did this. And so I apologize to all of you for the confusion that may have cost you.
You know, let me just add on to that. The reason why I didn't implement the signature verification process on this registration card is I didn't want you to sign your name, put your social, put your driver's license, and then mail it back to us. It's just, I'm the recorder also. I see property fraud. I know identity thefts out there. We've got great signatures for Carson City. So I don't need that information, but I do want you to know about your new voter registration identification number. What he said is very, very important. If someone moves from Washoe to Carson, in the past, we would sign them up as a brand new voter in Carson. But since now they have a unique voter ID, when they move from Washoe to Carson, they get transferred to Carson. But not only do they get transferred with all their information, but their voting history gets transferred too. So there is a great benefit to the voter to have this new system, this voter ID. But I want to protect your information as much as I possibly can.
I want to clarify that too. There was only one identifier we asked for on the signature verification card. It was not your first full social security number. It was the last 4 digits. It was your driver's license or your birthday year or birthday. It was up to the counties how to decide how to do that. It was also a decision about whether or not to include a return envelope. And the cost increased significantly, about 30% to include that additional envelope, but it also increased the amount of time it would take to get to the voter. And so I made a strategic decision to say we want to get this out there, one, to improve the security of the system so that you know who the voter is when they show up at a polling location, but also to want to decrease the number of ballots that need to be cured because the staff time that, it takes to cure a ballot is pretty significant. And we want clerks processing ballots so we can get Nevadans results as close to election night as possible because that's what voters deserve in Nevada. And that was the intent. It was voluntary, completely voluntary to submit your signature. You could walk down to the clerk's office and drop it off yourself in person. You could stick it in your own envelope and mail back to the clerk. Sometimes this is a process that requires engagement. It's just not all of us who are working in the election space. This requires the engagement of the voter to participate as well. The card was also an efficient way to get updated signatures without having to fill out a full voter registration form. Because if you filled out a full voter registration time, it actually took your time and effort, but also to the clerks and the staff that would have to process a full voter registration form when they could have easily done a signature verification card, which took less time, less effort, and allowed them to truly focus on the function of the elections.
Okay, so to clarify, if a person like me, say, didn't send that card back, do I have to go do a new signature somewhere?
If you want to, you're welcome to
Oh,
update
but you don't
it.
have to. Okay.
And it's really interesting. I was actually talking to a gentleman in Incline Village earlier this week, and he was an individual whose signature had substantially changed from the time when he registered to vote and when he went to DFV last. And that was because he was diagnosed with Parkinson. And for him, he came up to me and said, this was a way for me to address my signature without having to explain or be embarrassed about my situation. This was an opportunity for me to do it in a way I was comfortable. And I think we all understand and know that everybody has a unique situation. They have a unique perspective. Again, it was voluntary. If your signature has changed, we do encourage you to update that signature.
And that would just require someone to go down to the clerk's office here in Carson City
Absolutely.
and do it.
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's talk about this. Earlier this evening, we heard about voter ID and question 7, ranked choice voting. What are the foreseeable problems and costs associated with implementing the vote? Oh, let's just talk about voter ID, with implementing voter ID.
So as a chief election officer, I'm not going to get into that conversation. It's up to the Nevada voters to decide. Whatever the voters decide, we will implement and do. So.
Okay, so you haven't worked out any costs for that as a part
Well, we
of the
did
argument.
we did have to submit a budget, but it was basically to change the cost of DMV being able to manage or process those requests.
Okay, great, thank you. So the next question was, what is your opinion? And clearly you're not going to give that, so never mind. Let's move on. What changes in the voting process have been implemented since the last election?
I think the implementation of VREMS, Voter Registration Election Management System, which is our statewide voter database, which implements top-down voter registrations. We're one of the last states in the country to implement top-down. The 21 legislature mandated that the Secretary of State's office implement that system by the 24 election. And so we went to the legislature last session, got the necessary funding to build that system. We have successfully implemented it in the 14 months that we had. Oregon is in year 3 and still working through that process. So I am extremely grateful for our clerks and our Secretary of State's office for that implementation. You know, state government isn't always the best at system implementations, but we have proved when you build the right team and you have the right participation and the right engagement, you can get things done as a collaborative group. And I'm super proud of the clerks for making that happen. And thank you to Scott's leadership on that effort as well. So that, and what it does is actually brings the safety and security of our elections to the forefront. You know, I think you saw during the presidential primary, after the election, we had a bit of issue with the systems, and that was because our 17 counties had 17 different systems, 17 different processes, and trying to aggregate all of that data into one database was quite an effort. And it was an effort because some of those systems in some of those counties were no longer being supported by the vendor. And when the vendor is no longer to support those, you're subject to multiple of issues. Namely, one is transferring the data to match the codes that are in the other systems, but also it's a cybersecurity issue. We know Nevada is at the forefront of this election, not just here in our own country, but our adversaries are watching everything we are doing, and we needed to ensure that we had the strongest cybersecurity to protect every vote that's cast in this state, and that system is one of the most technology, newest systems that you could have, but we've also built a significant ring around the system from a cybersecurity perspective to know that we are protecting our votes against our adversaries every single day. So that's a huge, huge protection for all of you. That system also brings in uniformity, one single database that all registered voters are in the state of Nevada. So it allows us to do cleaner list maintenance moving forward so we can ensure every eligible voter in Nevada gets a ballot. We can manage that system in one unified way throughout 17 counties. And as Scott said earlier, if you move from Washoe to Carson, you can move that voter registration with you. And we know and we can manage in real time if somebody attempts to double vote in 2 counties. That system now catches that. But it also, too, allows us to ensure we're managing the election in an efficient way. Clark actually went on the system earlier this year, and so we used the system during the presidential primary and the Nevada primary. It made poll workers' lives easier because the system actually functions the way it should. It's logical. It makes for a better voter experience. They can update their information more efficiently, and so we have accurate, correct information in our voter rolls. The other thing is also, too, it gives us data from a statewide perspective to make decisions about what's in the best interest of Nevada's as a whole. When I took over as Secretary of State, I started asking poor Mark a lot of questions. And I said, what do you mean you don't have this data available immediately at the state level? That's crazy. And so he would have to call all 17 counties, gather that data, build an Excel spreadsheet, so then we could sit down and look at it. Now we can go into this system, and the clerks can go into the same system and pull data and pull reports to do what we need to do to ensure Nevada voters are having the best experience, that we have some of the cleanest voter rolls moving forward, and that we can continue to build the process for all of you.
Great. We're holding our applause now, remember. Mr. Wlaschin, would you do it?
Secretary Aguilar, 100% spot on. The VREM system and the transition to that program absolutely fundamentally changing the game for the better for voters, elections administrators, transparency across the board, and security. There is another one, though, that I want to call out. There was a change since the 2022 election cycle. And this one might almost sound a little bit silly that it finally took legislation to pass. There was a bill that requires now a training program for county and city election officials. You may have thought that Scott, when he took over as clerk, that they automatically sent him to some sort of elections boot camp on top of public administrator and a number of other things, but that simply wasn't the case. In fact, I won't speak for him, but I suspect a lot of it was on-the-job training, finding out as you go, which is, I think we all collectively recognize is maybe not the best way to do it. So this bill requires by law an annual training program to ensure that as turnover continues, as new staff members get promoted into new positions, as they move on to other county or state jobs, that there's going to be a requirement so that when new folks show up, they're going to be trained properly on how to administer election. And that's required at the city, county, and state across the board. The same bill also requires the development of an elections procedure manual, an elections for dummies, if you will, that is, by the way, publicly available. And when that document is completed, it will be available again for the public to see, so that you're seeing the same documents that will really be the textbook for that training program, so that a new official shows up, goes through a training program, has the same document that you're able to see, so that if you want to be an election observer, you have the textbook in front of you to see what's going on. It does not at all contradict or alter statutes, right? Our legislature and the governor make the laws. The regulations, the regulatory process is one that is also governed by law and approved ultimately by the Legislative Commission. This elections procedure manual really helps explain those different processes in a more accessible way, but again, does not contradict any of them. So I think that's another one, looking to the future, right, and trying to make sure that, again, folks that are in high school now are graduating and are interested in getting a civil service job in an elections type environment, like they're going to be set up for success in a way that, frankly, we didn't necessarily have when we came into these positions.
Also, too, we have to remember that our elections are about people. It's about the voters first, it's about the candidates, and it's about our election workers and poll workers. I say this all the time, but our poll workers and election workers are unsung heroes of our democracy. And last session, we passed a bill, SB 406, that made it a felony to harass and intimidate election workers. And I have to give credit to our legislature. They passed that bill unanimously. That was a bipartisan effort. And that's what we need to do as Nevadans. We need to work together to address the issues that we have. Not only did the Assembly suspend the rules to pass that bill out of committee so it could go to the floor for passage, but our governor stepped up and signed that bill because he understood the importance of our election workers. And he stood with them in that bill sign to say, I am here. We are here to protect you. And I think 80% of our poll workers and election workers are women. Those are our wives, those are our daughters, those are our mothers, those are our grandmothers. And we want to know that when they're working in a polling location or an election center, that they are in a safe environment, and I can confidently tell them, your family members are in a safe environment. We will take care of them, we will protect them. And it's been hard to recruit poll workers in some counties this election cycle because people are tired. They don't want to be harassed. They don't want to be intimidated. They are there to ensure that we as Americans and Nevadan citizens have the right to exercise the fundamental right to vote. And so we need to thank our poll workers. We need to thank them for what they're doing. So when you go to your polling location, please thank them.
Okay. The enthusiasm level up at this table is off the charts. I'm afraid these next questions are going to bring that down a little short.
Can't do it.
Are any counties in Nevada hand counting votes?
No. So by law and by statute, counties are required to tabulate all votes through the electronic method that they have chosen. However, counties can choose to do a hand audit if they choose to, but they must tabulate electronically first.
Thank you. Can counties refuse or delay the certification of the election?
No. So county commissioners have the obligation, and supervisors in Carson City, have the obligation and duty to certify the election. It is a ministerial responsibility. We saw what happened in Washoe County. However, I think in speaking with Clara and knowing Clara and getting to understand her thought process, this is where we become election officials dependent on legal counsel. And when you ask legal counsel for an opinion of statute or regulation, and that statute is explicitly clear on the responsibility, you expect that an assistant district attorney or district attorney to give you the guidance that you expect. And if you watch the video in Washoe County during that vote, I think the assistant district attorney did a disservice to that county commission. And by giving them an opportunity to interpret the law as they felt. But that's not what the law says. The law is clear that this is a ministerial responsibility of a county commissioner. It is to say, yes, the vote occurred, the votes have been counted, and here they are. If a county commissioner has issues with the elections process, they are the leader of that county. They can put an agenda item on an agenda to discuss the election. Also, too, if you want to see the election you want to see as a county commissioner, it takes investment. It takes investment in people, it takes investment in resources, and it makes sure that that investment is there for you to build the system that that county commissioner wants. They have the power of the purse to be able to see the election they want. That is leadership.
Great, thank you. Another one, is depositing the mail ballot of a family member or friend, sometimes referred to as harvesting, legal?
Yes, it's not called harvesting. That is a term that is, However, both sides this election cycle are deciding to have events where they are gathering ballots. However, those ballots must be delivered to the county clerk within 3 days, and if they are not, that is a felony.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I'd like to add, one of the things that we did here in Carson City is if you drive by the mail drop box or the ballot drop box at the community center, because of the law change, I can now take that ballot from the driver and they can watch me put it into the ballot drop box. There's no reason for them to get out of the car and put the ballot in the box themselves. Because of the change of the law, we can make it a little bit more customer service friendly and expedite the process in terms of dropping off ballots.
Great, thank you for that. How about this one? What happened regarding the 2020 fake electors from Nevada?
In 2020, I wasn't even thinking about politics,
Okay.
so I can't even answer that question.
Okay, so you don't know where that stands in terms of, will there be any repercussions for that?
Well, I know there was a bill that went through the legislature and it didn't come out as law because I think there was disagreement on the penalty level of that law. However, I think there's lots of legal opinions, lots of legal research to talk about what that would look like if it were to move forward. Obviously, the federal government and Congress took action on that issue, and they have addressed it to ensure that Nevada votes get to where they need to get in a timely manner.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, I'll skip that question then. What about these questions? What does the Secretary of State do to ensure that only citizens of the United States and Nevada vote in our elections?
Do you want to answer that?
I can take the first whack at it, Mr. Secretary, if that's all right. So citizenship is an extremely important question, and it comes up quite a bit. But again, I'll tell you that it's the same concerns, same thoughts that you have that we want, right? At the end of the day, we want only qualified electors, people that are American citizens, 18, live in the state, live in the county for 30 days, in precinct for 10 days, that are above the age of 18 to vote, period. American citizens only. So there's a number of things actually that we do to ensure that American citizens and only American citizens vote in our elections. First and foremost, there's a number of verifications that occur when you do sign up to register to vote. That if you can provide certain information, driver's license ID, last four of your social security number, these go against their Social Security Administration validations that occur and against the DMV to, again, compare that data. And again, in most cases, quite frankly, the vast majority, we're talking about people that have a driver's license, not a driver's authorization card, which is it's not considered an identification according to even the card itself. And those validations achieve that and confirm the citizenship. There's a question on the voter registration form. In fact, if you haven't looked at a voter registration form recently, I'll tell you right up front, it's question number 1. Are you a U.S. citizen? And that individual, in addition to all those checks and balances that I was just talking about, also attests under penalty of perjury that they are, in fact, a U.S. citizen. Even beyond that, there are post-election things that we do. With the DMV, again, hand in hand, there's concerns that I've heard anyway about the automatic voter registration process. So after a general election, we'll gather the information from the DMV that identifies everyone who has gone through the not the AVR process, but gone to the DMV just in general, and present it in an immigration document. People that have green cards, for example, can in fact go and get a driver's authorization card with that green card, not a driver's license. Again, very different things when it comes to the administration of the driving privileges. We get that information, that list, and we compare it to our statewide voter registration list. Now, I'll tell you, a number of individuals go through the naturalization process. In fact, Nevada's got, I think, one of the highest percentages of naturalized citizens in the country. So going through and presenting that document doesn't mean that somebody hasn't been naturalized and ends up on our rolls. But we do check to see if they're registered to vote, if they've cast a ballot, and have vote history. We take that information and we provide it to the Department of Justice, who has the ability to go through one by one to see if somebody, in fact, is an American citizen or not. When we did that process after the 2020 general election, again, once we pass it over to the Department of Justice, they don't routinely give us updates, right? Law enforcement doing their law enforcement thing, of course. But I believe it was maybe 1 or 2 people that was identified as maybe shouldn't have even registered. Beyond that, again, we're talking minuscule impact. But nonetheless, even one person, right? And I think I'm probably confident in saying that we're all, again, on the same page. Even one person voting illegally is too many. And so we try, and we between the mechanical processes that validate that only one voter gets one vote, the checks and balances that we do, that there's a number of other things that we continue to look at as means to identify how we can validate and ensure the integrity and cleanliness of our voter rolls. And I'll tell you, I'm very much a pleased but not satisfied sort of guy, right? We're doing certain things now, but we're always looking. We're talking to the clerks and getting feedback. We talk to different groups across the country. My counterparts, the other state election directors in the 50 states plus DC, we ask, what do you guys do? How does it work? Is it, what are your statutes require something different? We hear about the SAVE program. Some of you may have heard about the systematic alien verification for entitlements. It's a program that allows and really tracks if somebody has ever applied for, that is an alien, somebody that uses, again, an immigration document, for entitlements from the federal government. That process, you have to pay for an individual record. There's no batch search. It also only identifies that they have ever once done it. So my counterparts in other states, when they've said, well, we use this and here's how, it becomes a part of a quilt work, a framework, if you will, to try to, again, improve the security and sanctity of these voter rolls. So, all that being said, very confident that, again, the things that we're doing ensure that only American citizens in Nevada get to cast a ballot. Still looking to see other improvements going to the future because, again, pleased but not satisfied. Maybe there is something new that the federal government will offer next year for us to compare and contrast. Lastly, I'll say that if you do have any information, if you find somebody, if you have a friend who's not an American citizen, if you hear somebody bragging about that, by all means, report it. If you have a concern, we have an election integrity violation report process. And if you report that, it gets investigated. We will look into that situation. I've heard, this guy lives near me. He's got a funky last name with a W and an L. There's not a lot of vowels in his name. I'm nervous about it, right? Like, if those sorts of allegations come our way, you need a little bit more than that, right? Beyond just a suspicion about a last name. But again, if you have information or evidence, by all means, send it our way, and we will absolutely take that investigation seriously, and if need be and appropriate, refer it for a criminal investigation.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for being here and for all your information and your enthusiasm and your reassurance about our voting system. I would like to end by saying that voting is our sacred right and responsibility, and we hope that all of you have a plan to vote. As you heard, early voting starts this Saturday, and it goes through November 5th, which is Election Day. The Nevada Appeal will post...
I'm sorry, ma'am. It goes through November 1st. Early voting is the 19th to the 1st.
Oh, okay, right. Sorry. Okay.
I don't want anybody to show up on the 2nd and go, what's Scott do? He locked the doors.
So you can early vote from Saturday till November 1st. Then there's a little lull, and then you can vote on Election Day, which is November 5th.
But you can always vote your universal mail ballot anytime.
There you go. Thanks for saving me there. So the Nevada Appeal will post the videos of the forums on their appeal or their website, YouTube website. Also, our final forum is Wednesday, and at that time we will hear from our race for U.S. House of Representatives. We will have discussions of ballot question 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. So thank you again for coming and being informed voters. And thank you, gentlemen. Good night.
Thank you.